Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda, and today, as you're seeing this, is Saturday. I just straightened my camera out. It's just driving me crazy. And normally on Saturdays, I do weekly wrap-ups. I'm going to do something a little different today. Normally, also, I film these on Fridays. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to film this on Friday, so I'm filming it on Thursday. And that also means I haven't actually finished anything after March 31st this week. So I decided to just use this space to do my monthly wrap up. And also because it's March, my end of Q1 yearly goals check-in. But I will give you a little life update. I am back from vacation and it is rainy here in Oregon. What else can you say? So yeah, we're just getting back into things. The end of my kids' third quarter at school is a week from yesterday that you see it. So Friday of the 11th, they have off from school, which is just kind of blowing my mind. My daughter's going to be a junior. Oh my gosh, we're going to have to start doing the college stuff. If you want to know what I've been up to, my vacation vlog is up. You can go check that. It's like this camera moves on its own, I swear. Anyhow, so I don't have that much to say because of all that. So, but anyway, that's what we're doing. This morning we had a mad dash around the house because my son has to read a book and write a book report, and he chose The Hobbit, which yay. I did have to explain to him that the movie's a little bit different. So you can't just watch the movie and write the book report. I actually don't know if that's true, but I put that out there just in case he'll read it. But my husband has a copy of The Hobbit somewhere. And of course, we have to leave the house about 8. So at 8:01, my son's like, I need a copy of The Hobbit. So we had to do a mad dash around the house. This camera is driving me freaking nuts. There. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on. But let's get into March. So March was a busy month. I hosted March on the Moors. I had spring break, all of that, but I still had a really good reading month. I read 19 books in March. And part of that was benefited by travel. So I don't always get as much time to read as I'd like when I'm in Arizona, but I have flights down and back from Arizona where I do get to read. I always sit next to my daughter so she doesn't, and my son doesn't bug me either. I just can't sit next to my husband on the plane because he will bug me. So I have to sit next to my kids. We usually sit 2 and 2 because there's like 3 seats in a row. So we sit 2 and 2 like this. Although on our last flight back, my son and daughter wanted to sit together. So I actually got to sit on the aisle. Usually I have to sit in the middle, but so that was cool. Anyway, I had plenty of reading time on the plane and I had reading time at home too. So 19 books was pretty good. Of those, 14 were fiction and 14 were fiction and 5, were fiction. I didn't DNF any books and my average rating was a 4.1, which is really good. And I had quite a few 5 stars this month. So that is a good thing. As for format of my books, 9 of them were in print. 7 were ebooks. I did 2 audiobooks and then 1 tandem read, which was my Shakespeare play where I listen to it as I read it. Now, if you've never seen my updates before, my rank, I have toyed with my rating system so many times, but basically I do star ratings because you kind of have to for Goodreads and Storygraph, but really the way I organize my ratings are the first rating is up in the air. This is generally a 3-star because I don't know what to think of it. So I give it a 3-star to be safe. 3 stars are not bad ratings in my book. And then I have a 1 stars, which I wish I would have DNF'd. I don't have any of those this month. 2 stars are books I would not recommend. 3 stars are books I would recommend, or as I said, books that are kind of up in the air. And these are books that I would recommend to some people, or I would recommend them with caveats, things like that. Or, it was good, but there were still some things that were, issues with it, but whatever. 4 stars are highly recommended books, and 5 stars are 5 stars. They're books that I would count among my all-time favorites. So I had 1 up in the air book, and that is Alice Hoffman's Here on Earth. This is a retelling of Wuthering Heights. And as I have said every time I have talked about this book since reading it, this book is only for people who have read and liked Wuthering Heights. If you have not read Wuthering Heights, or if you've read Wuthering Heights and didn't like it, don't even try this book. Just don't. It's not for you. There were issues with this book, but I still was really into it. I think it was a really good retelling of a very difficult book. Alice Hoffman clearly understands Wuthering Heights. But it's hard. I mean, Wuthering Heights is a hard book itself. So of course this is going to be a hard book too. And, you know, I had complaints, but there were things I loved. I was all over the place on this. I did it as a buddy read, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, I had one book I would not recommend, and this one surprised me because it was my Shakespeare, and that's All's Well That Ends Well. I did not like this book. It was like, it was a woman trying to trap a guy, and the guy was clearly not into her, and I'm just not here for that. And it did involve like rape by deception, which is not something they probably would have considered, but that is actually a thing that now is that we recognize as a thing. I didn't like this book. It wasn't even funny. For a comedy, it wasn't even funny. I didn't like this book. No. Go read something else. Go read another Shakespeare play. Now, as for books that I would recommend, but not highly recommend, I only had one. And in this case, it's really just because of what it was. And this book is Anne Brontë, Nightwalker by Gia Haff or something. There's the cover and there's the author. This is vampire-themed Brontë fanfic. And it's really good for what it is, but it is vampire-themed Brontë fanfic. Anne Brontë is a vampire, but she doesn't like that term, so you call her Nightwalker. And I enjoyed it. I mean, for what it was, I enjoyed it. Like, there you go. It's kind of like, in my kids, the way they do school differently now. But one thing that they do, like with my daughter in high school, is like you can choose, like when you take a test, what level you want. There's like basic level, standard level, and highest level. And the best grade you're going to get on a basic level is a C. And the highest grade you're going to get on a standard level is a B. If you want an A, you have to take highest levels because there's 3 different versions of the test. This is really a case where it's like the level, it's kind of like a standard level. It's like it's not ever going to be a 4-star because that's just as high as it goes, is the 3-star, the recommended. That's kind of what I felt about. But it was great for what it was. It was really entertaining. I read the bulk of it on the plane, which was good because I'm a nervous flyer. So yeah, it was entertaining. There you go. And now I have 16 books that are either highly recommended or are 5 stars. The first one is The Brontes, Children of the Moors by Mick Manning. This is a picture book, but it's really for older kids. I didn't put this down there. I'm considering this my middle grade book, actually, for middle grade March. And this is just a juvenile biography of the Bronte sisters. I enjoyed it. It did have to kind of pussyfoot a little around some of the issues with the Brontes because they aren't really picture book juvenile fiction. They didn't live the kind of life, really. So there's some of that. Probably my biggest problem with that book is it spoils Jane Eyre. It has the entire plot of Jane Eyre in it, which Angelia, that's her thing too. But I will say this. The first time I ever read Jane Eyre, I did not know the story. So I was completely shocked by it. So I do consider Jane Eyre, that whole thing, a spoiler. I don't for Little Women because that was an episode of Friends. And I think once Joey puts, and that, to avoid spoilers, the thing with Little Women, I'll always say the thing that made Joey put it in the freezer, but it's not really a spoiler. Anyway, yeah, great. Definitely for older middle grade though. And then I finally read a book that's been recommended to me so many times, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. I'm going to be fair on this one. The reason this isn't a 5-star is a me issue. And that's because my brain would get tied up with these details that didn't need to be tied up with. Like, why is it this? Why is the electricity still on? Things like that. Like issues it really didn't need to be. And that's just my brain doing my brain sort of things. Otherwise, fantastic, beautiful book. Really stuck with me. Hauntingly beautiful. Would highly recommend, if you are one of the few people who have not read that book, I would definitely pick it up because it was good. And the next one was one of 2 book club books for the same book club, but we'll get to that. And that is This Other Eden by Paul Harding. I am holding the book up, but I actually did this one on audio. And this is basically the story of life on an island in 1912. It's an island where a lot of former enslaved people live and their descendants. There's a storm, and I gave this highly recommended, but I got to be honest, it hasn't really stuck with me. So I enjoyed it while I read it, and I thought it was beautiful writing, but it hasn't stuck with me. But yeah, so there you go. Unlike the other one, but we'll get to that. And then I had my Agatha Christie. And this one really surprised me because it's not one of her really well-known ones or really big ones. And that is The Hollow. And the reason I liked this so much was because there are a handful of Agatha Christie books where she gets really creative with sort of the whole solution or the dynamic, something like that. Other ones that would go into this are Murder on the Orient Express or The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. It's just, those are just really good for the same reason. And this one is that way too. She does something different. I mean, she does something different in all of them. And it just hasn't gotten the recognition, I think, or it just isn't as well known, I should say, outside of people who read a lot of Agatha Christie. My big issue with it was the casual use of the N-word. Come on, Agatha. You should know better by now. This book was written in like 1946, I think. 1946. By that point, she should have known. Because we already had the title of what is now known, and then there were none, that whole thing. So she should have known by this point. There's a word that you don't use, but she still used it. But other than that, it was a great book. Then I had this one, which I have to correct something. When I talked about this one, the Mare, I said it wasn't available in the US. It was not available in the US when I ordered it. It is now actually available in the US. You might have a hard time finding it, but it is available on both Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And that's what people have told me. I haven't gone to check to see if Bookshop has it. But I said, I had to get this from Blackwell's because it wasn't available in the US. When I got this book, it wasn't available in the US, but now it is. And that is the Mare by Angharad, Hampshire. This is so close to being a 5-star with me. And the only reason why it probably isn't a 5-star is just the writing style is very journalistic. And I think for it to have been a 5-star for me, it probably would have needed a little bit more finessing. That's it. I mean, it's fine. It's not bad writing at all. It's just, I would want a little bit more. That's just kind of my preference. This is the true story. Well, it's based on a real person. Hampshire's really clear in the end that she took the facts that she had and then created characters from that. So she would say this too. It's not fair to say this is the true story of this person, but she took the facts around this and created a person. But it's about Hermione, that's how you say, Hermione Braunsteiner. So Braunsteiner was a real person. Was an Austrian woman. As a young woman, in World War II, she worked as a prison guard, first at Ravensbrück, and then a couple other ones, well, one other one in Maedek, another, let me see. So where she lives in Long Island and Majdanek, is the name is Maspeth, so I get the names mixed up. A death camp in Poland. She comes back to Ravensbrück and then works at like a factory death camp. She had gotten the name The Mare because she kicked people to death. She was not a nice person. Again, all true. She after the war, like 10 years after the war, she met an American. They got married. She came back to the United States. He did not know this about her. He had known that she worked in a factory. Or she was a prison. He knew she was a prison guard, but he didn't know it was that kind of prison guard. They have a great, a good run for a bit, and then a reporter comes. She's been tracked down by Simon Wiesenthal, who is the he's not in this book. It's just mentioned. Simon Wiesenthal, who is the Nazi hunter. Things happen. She is extradited. She has to give up her U.S. citizenship. She's extradited back to Germany. None of this is a spoiler. This is all fact. This is all. It's a thing. Everyone knows this. And then she was sentenced to life in prison, although she didn't quite spend life in prison for her crimes during World War II. A really interesting book, and one I really think Americans should be reading. I did not feel sympathy for Hermione at all. I did not. I just didn't, because I don't feel sympathy for Nazis. I have a line. I felt great sympathy for her husband, though, and I thought that was really well done, because he didn't know her past when he married her, and then he had these decisions when they came out, what to do. I thought that was really well done. Very important story, highly recommended, and yes, you can get it in the United States. I stand corrected. Okay, the next one I don't have with me, it was a library book, which is The Forest Unseen. Oh, I forgot to put this down there too. I already realized in my notes I forgot a couple things, but I'll try to remember to mention them in the right place. The Forest Unseen, A Year's Watch in Nature by David George Haskell. Haskell he's British born, but he is a professor in Tennessee, and he went out to, I think he said it was old growth, although old growth in Tennessee and old growth in Oregon are two different animals. But he mapped off like a square meter, and he just like spent the year studying this square meter of forest ground. It's very interesting. I thought it was really good. It's pretty timeless. And I say that because last month's book, which was Spillover, which was about diseases that spilled over from animals to humans, but it had been written in like 2017, something like that. Not timeless, more of a historical thing at this point, looking back to what we thought then. I mean, the book isn't historical, but we have to look at it kind of historically. This is timeless. Really enjoyed it. Really, really enjoyed it. Pretty quick read, I guess. I read it just little bits at a time. Enjoyed it. Book Naturalist Book Club, but I'll get to that. And then I have my second book, and I don't know why I have two books from this book club. This is my postal book group. I don't know. But I had The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. And as with this other Eden, I am holding up the book, but I listened to it. And in this case, I listened to it because I already had the audiobook, and the audiobook is narrated by Tom Hanks. Fantastic. You know you've made it when Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks are narrating your books. Oh, and Tom Hanks wasn't even her first choice. John Lithgow was her first choice. Anyway, this is the story of a brother and a sister. And the Dutch house is a house that they grow up in that they lose through family developments. I really enjoyed this book. Loved it. I'm not sure if I would enjoy it as much as if I read it, because a lot of it was the narration that I liked. Tom Hanks' narration, although the story was great. I can't imagine that I wouldn't like it if I read it. I just think that the Tom Hanks narration gave it that extra little oomph. I know for a lot of people, this is a 5-star book. And I think the reason why it isn't a 5-star book for me, and this is a thing with Ann Patchett especially, it's with a lot of authors, but especially with Ann Patchett, is I need that kind of some little connection between me and the story to really lift it up. And I didn't have that there. It's nothing bad. This is my experience and this is the book, and there's not that connection point. Like with Tom Lake, there was COVID. That's a connection point for everybody. Unless you are, 4 years old, you have that connection point. So like Tom Lake was a 5-star book for me. But yeah, so it was still really good and would recommend it. And I think it could very possibly be a 5-star book for a lot of people. But I really enjoyed it. So that's The Dutch House, and it got an audiobook off my list, but we'll get to that. And then I had a really short, I don't have it, it was a library book, also digital, a really short, really strange, but entertaining book called Woodsworm by Layla Martinez. This is a very short little horror novel, haunted house novel. It was good. It was very strange. So it's translated from the Spain Spanish, European Spanish. So it's set in Spain. And I really see that difference between like American horror and we'll just say European or maybe specifically Spanish horror, because it does feel very different horror-wise. I would say if you are someone, this is a creepy book more than a scary book. I will say that. It's creepy rather than scary. Well, I don't know. It has some ghosts in it. I don't know. I didn't find it scary. I found it creepy. That's what I'm going to say. So this might be one I would recommend to someone who thinks, oh, I'm too scared to read horror, but I want to try it. Try Woodsworm. I didn't think it was especially scary. But I could be wrong. I don't know. Your mileage may vary. I just thought it was really interesting, very unique and original, a very quick read. I think it's less than 150 pages. So I read it in less than a flight. So really enjoyed it. The next book I do not have because I left it in a little free library in Green Valley, Arizona. And this is Birding with Benefits by Sarah T. Dubb. I am not a romance reader, especially in my past I have been for different reasons. Romance for me is a genre that I read for certain reasons. Like in 2017, I read it because I needed to know there'd have to be a happy ending. I only read romance in 2017, I think, other than like book club books. But I haven't read a lot of it lately just because it hasn't called to me. But this book is set in Tucson, which is where I went for spring break. So I wanted some Tucson books, and this is one of two. Or Arizona books, I should say. And this one is set in Tucson, and it's a fake dating trope, which is not my favorite trope, but it worked well here, with older protagonists, which I love. And it just, great sense of place. It was the perfect book for me to read in this situation, like in Tucson. If I had not read it in Tucson, this may just be a recommended book, but I read it in Tucson and it was perfect. So highly recommended. One thing I did like about it that has nothing to do with Tucson is that it is not a case of people just not communicating with each other. These two characters actually communicate really well, which I don't want to paint with too wide of a brush, but I frequently see in romance where the whole conflict just is caused by people not talking to each other. And that's not the case here. And I think that the issues that these two characters dealt with were very authentic. So I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it if you want a fun little romance, Birding with Benefits. It is spicy. I will say that it is spicy, probably a little spicier than I like mine. But I just kind of skim those parts and go on. It's fine. Okay, the next book I read, excuse me, had to cough. The next book I read, it's a Amazon original short story is what it is. And I read it on the train home from the airport. And it is Signal Moon by Quinn. And this is a fun little speculative story during World War II. Not a Bletchley Park codebreaker, but did something with like the codes and the radios. This woman, and she gets this very strange. She finds this really strange broadcast, and listening to it, she realizes that it's actually like set in 2023. So she sets up this whole thing to see to see these people are going to die in this. She hears people die in the broadcast, and it's a certain date in 2023. So she realizes if she can get a hold of this person who made this broadcast, then she might be able to stop it. So she does this whole thing to this in 80 years later, is going to be delivered to this guy who comes into a hotel and with this old radio. And yeah, it's just a really fun little story. Flew by that train ride, which is 80 minutes long. It didn't take the whole time to read it, but it flew by. I enjoyed it. It made me want to read some more Quinn again. It's been a while since I've read her. So maybe you want to pick up another one of her books. I have one upstairs, which is one of those books that she did with a number of authors. I read one before that was set during the French Revolution, where everyone wrote a little story about a different person involved and it became one book. The one I have upstairs is about Pompeii, so I might read that pretty soon. And then my last and the highly recommended is this one I finished 10 o'clock on the 31st. SPQR, A History of Ancient Rome by Mary Beard. I get the Mary Beard thing now. I did enjoy this. I learned a lot. It is very high level, and some people, I can see some people like my husband when he gets his rainy little paws on this book, will complain that it ends before the fall of Rome. Her idea of the history of ancient Rome ends before the fall of Rome. Although she explains why she chose that, so it didn't bother me at all. Very accessible, interesting. She knows her stuff. It's definitely for people who don't, I shouldn't say people who don't read a lot of history. It's accessible for people who come at any point during if I have a degree in history and I enjoyed it, someone who doesn't read history might also enjoy it. That's what I'm trying to say. History's my thing, so enjoyed SPQR. Okay, let's get to our 5 stars. And I don't have many of these with me. I have a couple, but not many. The first one was The Distant Marvels by Chantel Acevedo. I ordered this. It was back ordered and then canceled, but I got my copy from the library. So I'm still going to try and find, I think there's Mare Andrea said there's a new edition coming out. And this is the story of a woman. It's one of those, this is her whole life story. Kind of that's the plot, is her life. And it's set during the war in Cuba, which is what Americans would call the Spanish-American War, which is really a misnomer because they showed up at the last minute and rough rode their horses and, to hell with Maine, remember Maine, all that crap, right? They kind of came in the last minute. The Americans aren't that big of a deal in this. It's really between Cuba and Spain. And this character is Cuban and very interesting. So this is history I didn't know. And that's a great, that's one of the things I love about historical fiction is you can learn history you don't know in a very easy way. And well-written, interesting characters. It is translated. The author's, no, it is not translated. It is not translated. The author is Cuban American, but she is of Cuban heritage. And really, and I learned quite a bit. There's things that I did not go the way I thought they were going to go. And the way they went How should I put this? Seemed a little crazy, but they were actually real, if that makes sense. Really interesting. I quite liked this one. And then I had my one reread for the month, which was Agnes Grey. Now, the interesting thing about this is the first time I read it, which was before I was giving star ratings, it probably was not a 5-star. The second time I read it this time was a 5-star. And I think a lot of that is because I have more life there's 3 reasons why. One, I am decades older than the first time I read it. I have more life experience and I have had children. I think that change really was probably what changed my view the most. 2, the first time I read it, it was for academic purposes. And when you read something academically, it's a different experience. It just is. And 3, I did this as a buddy read, and it was a great buddy read. It was a group read for March on the Moors, and I did a Voxer group with Christina and Pat, and we had, and Mare Andrea, and we had great fun, great discussions. Love this. So I loved this book more than I remember liking it. And you can see my March on the Moors wrap up to see how I ranked it in my ranking of the Brontë novels. So there you go. And then I have one that is just, I want every American to read this book. And there's an updated version, which apparently I had. I got it from the library. I got the digital copy from the library. And that did not, like the listing in the library did not say it was the updated version, but it was clearly the updated version because the one I said, it said it was published in 2017 and there was stuff referred to it post 2017, like January 6th in the 2024 upcoming election. So, but this is On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century by Timothy Snyder. Go get this book, read it. If you're an American, I mean, even if you're not American, go read this book. You need to read this book. You need to read this book and you need to put it to use. This is an instruction manual. It's easy to read. It's quick. Just go do it. And you can go watch memes and just get the high level and then you're like ready to go when you read the book because you still need to read the book. You can't just go by the memes. Just go get it. Okay, just do it. And then I had a book I'd been meaning to read for a long time, and finally Mare Andrea and I buddy read it, and that is Searching for Sunday, Loving, Leaving, and Finding the Church by Rachel Held Evans. I'm not going to do a whole books for the soul one on this because Mare Andrea and I discussed it, and it's just I'm just gonna leave it there, other than to say I am not someone who deconstructed. I have not needed to deconstruct. That's not the kind of Christian I am. I was never an evangelical. I was always an Episcopalian, other than times I was a Lutheran, progressive. So I've never had to go through that deconstruction process for whatever reason. So, but even with that, and that's a lot of what this book is about, her deconstructing, but a lot of it was change the way that I thought about some things that are going on in my church. Nothing bad. I'm just saying different ways of looking at things and looking at faith. And I really enjoyed it. And the world lost a shining star when Rachel Held Evans died so young. Great book. Great book. And then my final 5-star book, which one I did not expect would be a 5-star. And that was my other vacation book, Dinosaurs by Lydia Millet. This book, one thing, not set in Tucson, set in Phoenix. Lydia Millet is from Tucson though. That's okay, still Arizona. I just pretended it was set in Tucson. This is one of those books that's not big on plot. You have to be okay with that. And I am, but I would say, this is not a plotty book. But this is about Gil, who moves from New York to Arizona after a relationship fails. And Gil has had a unique life in that he was orphaned young, raised until he was about 12 by his grandmother, and then his grandmother died. So then he was just sort of raised in this sort of situation where he had these court-appointed guardians who just made sure he stayed alive and he did his thing. And then when he went to college and became 18, I guess when he was 18, he found out that he was rich beyond imagination. He had this huge trust fund. So he's never had to work. And so he's the sort of person who never really felt a real purpose in life. And anyway, he decides to move from New York to Arizona, and he walks, which that's a choice. That is a choice. But in Arizona, he buys this house. He calls it the castle that looks backyards, people on the other side have this glass wall so he can see into their house, and it's a family of 4. And he becomes friends with the family of 4 and really involved with them. And this is a book about found family and finding yourself and finding your own purpose and your own worth. Not super plotty, but really lovely, really funny in parts. Lydia Millet has opinions that I agree with. Let's just put it there. Really enjoyed it, and I really want to read more Lydia Millet. I have a children's Bible on one of my e-readers, but beyond that, I haven't read anything by her, but I am going to continue to look for more books by her. So let me go into my read-alongs and events, and let me do the 2 that I forgot to mention. The 3 I forgot to mention. 1, middle grade March was the Brontes' Children of the Moors, the picture book. Book Naturalists was The Forest Unseen, a year's Watch in Nature by David George Haskell. So I read that for Book Naturalists. And for Mare Andrea's book club, Books and Bocadillos, I read The Distant Marvels. I forgot to put those in my notes, so I put down there. So going to my notes, I had 2 buddy reads. I read Here on Earth with Michelle from Michelle and Reads, which was actually a really good buddy read because she either DNF'd or did not remember Wuthering Heights, whereas I know the story really well. So we had some really interesting discussions about that, like and how it related to the book and what it was like to not know that and read the book. So we had some really good discussions, but we had issues with this book. But we also, it's a difficult book. It's a difficult book. And then, as I said, I did a buddy read of Searching for Sunday with Mare Andrea. Talk about that. I'm not going to do Books for the Spirit. It was a great buddy read. And this is definitely a good buddy read to do with someone that you know fairly well because you do kind of get into your stuff with it. So I'm really glad that I read it with Mare Andrea because we've done several books together. We know each other pretty well. So it was a really good buddy read. Now, book clubs, the only book club reading other than Book Naturals Book Club that I had this month were for my postal book group, which somehow I ended up with 2 books. So I don't know what happened there, but I need to write up my things and send them off. And that was The Other Eden by Paul Harding, which was highly recommended, even though it didn't really stick with me. And The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. Both of them I ended up doing on audio. I did The Other Eden on audio because I needed to fit it in with my reading, and The Dutch House because I already had it on audio. So you did that. Historathon 2025. I finished it March 31st. I got it in Q1. There you go. April 1st, I started my Q2 book. I'm not leaving my reading. And plus, Q2 and Q3 especially, I have a lot of books to read because that's my area. My degree is in British history, especially medieval history. So that's my area, right? I have a lot of books to read for Q2 and Q3. So I've already started Q2. I'm not waiting till last minute with this one like I did with this one. But this was I did count the Natalie Haynes book I read in January, Divine Might, which was about the goddesses. I did count that because that was kind of Historathon too. But so I did Greece and Rome. And then March of the Mammoths is not a book I mentioned here because March of the Mammoths, you only have to start it in March, which I did. And I have not finished it. In fact, I'm still not far into it. And that is the Brontes' Wild Genius on the Moors, the Story of a Literary Family by Juliet Barker. It's over 900 pages, so I am going to be reading it. Probably not going to finish it in April, maybe not even May. But I started it in March, so we can still count it for March on the Moors. And then the big one, which was not March on the Moors, March of the Mammoths. March on the Moors was my Brontë event I did for the first time, and I had so much fun. Thank you all for joining in. It will be back next year. As I said in my wrap-up, we do a group read. Like January on the March on the Moors Discord, I'll do a little poll and we'll choose our group read for next year then. But for that, I read Agnes Grey, which was our group read. I read Here on Earth, which was one of my retellings slash Brontes as characters. The other one was Anne Brontë, Nightwalker. I can't believe I read that book and enjoyed it. It was good for what it was. It was great. And then for the biography, I read Brontë, Children on the Moors by Mick Manning, which was the picture book. I had planned to read another book. There was a whole there's a whole thing with that. And I've mentioned it in other videos, so I ended up counting the picture book for that. Although I have also started the Brontes by Julia Barker, which will be going for quite some time. Now, let's get to our stats, but I'm going to kind of put them together because this is the end of Q1. And my first yearly goal that I'm checking in on is end the year with one less book on my own TBR than I started the year with, which is basically my stats. So my reading goal for the year is sort of number is 175 books, and I'm at 54, which is 10 ahead of schedule. So that's good. My owned TBR count, let's get the ugly out of the way. My owned TBR count is 885, which is up 14 from last month. I did so well in February, and then March I went up. And that's up 22 overall. It's still early in the year. I can still get that down. I even have a book that I hauled in March that I think I'm going to unhaul, which is The Death Comes to Pemberley, because I mentioned it and everyone said they hated it. So I might just unhaul that one. We'll see. As for print, I have 320. Is that right? 327 print books. Hold on a sec. Yes, I had to do the math on that one. 327 books in print on my owned TBR. So that's up 16 from last month and up 23 overall. I know I need more bookshelves. For ebooks, I'm at 491, which is down 2 from last month and down 1 overall. And if you break that out, 127 of them are Kindle books, and I'm down 2 from last month, down 1 overall, which means I have Kobo, which is 364, and there's no change for the year or last month. And then audiobooks, I'm at 65, which is down 1 from last month and 1 overall. And that comes from Audible, which is at 14, down 1 and 1. And that is The Dutch House. And then at Libro, I'm at 51, which is no change. I will say it goes up in April because of the BookTube prize. I did, April 1st, get 4 audiobooks from Libro because I've been hoarding credits for the BookTube prize, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so that's Q1. Clearly, I need to do some work on it. The next goal was no more than 50% of my books from U.S. authors, and I am currently at 52.6%. So I'm really close. I just need to be more mindful there and more deliberate with my choices, which is kind of with my next one too. At least, so this was originally written, at least 30% of my books written by own voices authors. I've changed that to POC authors only because of the way my spreadsheet is set up that I get from the Currently Reading podcast. So, to add in the LGBTQ side, which I do want to read more, don't get me wrong. Math-wise, it's hard math because they're separate now. So we're just going to say POC authors, and I'm at 25.9%. Again, not quite there, but I can be deliberate and get it there. The next one was to complete the Book of the Month challenge, which is a challenge that they have for Book of the Month members in there. Past couple of years, I've tried to do my own little, I'm going to read X amount of Book of the Month, and the math, which I just made it overly complicated. So I said, there's already a challenge there. Let's just do it. So to do that, you have to complete the Book Boss challenge, which is you need to read 15 Book of the Month books, and they have to be books released or that you got through Book of the Month from 2024 or later. So even if you got for example, this was last year. One of the books I did count towards it last year was Heart's Invisible Furies, which came out in 2018 or something. But because I had only gotten it as an add-on, I could still count it. So that's the deal with that. So 15 of those books, I've read 3, which a little behind schedule. I need to kind of get that going. Okay, and then I have to there's a bunch of other categories, and you have to do at least 3. There are 4 that I could do, so I'll go through the ones. One is Debut Darling. I need to read 5 books by debut authors. I've read 2, so we're good there. Long Hauler, that's read a book of at least 400 pages. 2, you have to read 4 of them. I've done 2. Hot Taker, which is writing a review of the books once you read them. I do that for all of them, so you need to do it for 5 books. I've done it for 3. I do it for all of them, so that one's an easy one. And then Omniva Reader, which is reading in different genres. You need to read books in at least 6 different genres. That one can be a little hard. That's why I'm kind of glad I have 4 in case I fall back, but I'm 2 out of 6 on that one. So that's where I am, a little bit behind, but nothing horrible. And then the 5th one is to complete the Storygraph Reads the World 2025 challenge. So every year Storygraph does a Storygraph Reads the World challenge where they choose 10 nations and you're supposed to read a book from each of those. Now you decide if it's a book set there or a book by an author from there or how you want to do it. Personally, I do it, the author is from that country. And from that country, that means born there, usually raised, whatever, with the exception of Jhumpa Lahiri. I count her as Italian because no one has tried to be Italian more than Jhumpa Lahiri, but that's not part of this. So there are 10. I've read 2. I have read books from Belgium and Mexico. The book from Belgium was I Who Have Never Known Men, which was from this month. And then from Mexico, it was Valeria Luiselli's The Lost Children's Archive. She was from Mexico. So I have Belgium and Mexico taken care of. The countries I still have to do. This is not going to be hard. These are not, for the most part, not hard countries. Australia, I just didn't do it. China, Egypt, Iceland. Iceland's going to be super easy. Kenya, Malaysia, the Netherlands, or the Philippines. So if you have books that you could recommend that you think I would like from China, Egypt, Kenya, Malaysia, the Netherlands, or the Philippines, please let me know. I think I've got Australia and Iceland taken care of. But those other ones, I will definitely take recommendations. So there you go. This video has gone on for a long time. I'm sorry, but you know, once a quarter, it's going to be this long. Usually it's not this long, but I had the goals to do. So yeah, that was my March and my first quarter. Let me know how your reading year is going so far. Let me know if you have any recommendations for the Storygraph Reads the World Challenge. And thanks. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.